Left Brain Co here, and welcome to part 2 of the build video for the Hit and Run Bat from the Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League game. If you have not seen part 1, be sure to check the description below for a link to that video. You can find all of the files required for this project, as well as some instructions and reference images on my Thingiverse page under Left Brain Co. Please be sure to follow me here and on Instagram at Left Brain Co. And be sure to check out Angel Young 13, who provided photography and inspiration for this project. Let's begin with a few reference images, and then we'll get on to the build. For a list of all required supplies, please check video 1 or the Thingiverse link to see what is required or needed for the project. Keep in mind you do not have to have all of the equipment I use in this video, so be creative and make use of what you have available. And as always, safety first. Let's start off talking about dimensions and scaling so you can use your reference material effectively. We're going to start with a few simple tips on how you can use a free image editor to take precise measurements from in-game objects. So to start with, you can learn a few shortcuts to use. One good one on the Windows system is the Windows Shift S for screenshot. And so what I have right now is our reference document open that you can find on the link mentioned previously. And I'm going to hold Windows Shift and hit S, and that's going to allow me to snip an image from here. You can do the same thing in game if you wanted to. Now I'm going to go into Gimp. Gimp is free, so just search for their website. I'll put a link in the description below as well. And we're going to create a new image. So with the baseball bat that I have, I measured it, and I know it is exactly 31 inches wide, being the length of the bat. And so here we're just going to put 31 inches. And in the bottom, we know it's at least a few less than 4 inches. It's probably like 2 and some change, so just put 4 inches there. So that'll give me a scale replica of what the bat should be. However, this image is just used for scaling, so we do not care about picture quality. 300 pixels would be a bit much, so I want it to be very low impact on my system, so I'm just going to switch that down to 50. And the best kind of rule of thumb, at least with systems as of right now, is let's say you've got 31 inches, right? So 31 times 50 being, so that's the width times how many pixels per inch, okay? And that gives us about 1500 pixels. And then height's gonna be significantly less. So as long as those dimensions are less than say 2000 pixels or so, or even smaller than that if you experiment with it, it should be very quick to edit and work on those images, which is ideal. So I'm gonna go ahead and go with that with the 50 pixels. And now we've got an image that is scaled, and you'll notice that my markers up here, as they're set to inches, it shows me inches marked on both axes, okay? And so what I'm going to do now is paste my image, so just Control V for paste. You could also go to like edit, paste, stuff like that. And then we need to scale the image because it's not quite lining up with what it should. So first we'll need it to be level. And if you look over here on the far right, you'll see quite a few icons. The one we're looking for is the rotate icon. Shift R would do it. But if you just go through and right click on them until you see it, this will be the rotate tool. It should be in a similar location. And now when I click on my image, you'll see it is rotating it. And I'm just going to get it close. It doesn't have to be perfect, but the closer we can get, the better. And then once you get it rotated to where it's about level, you'll want to scale it. So you have your layer selected down here. And we're going to go back up here and we'll just say scale and click once. And then because it's linked, I don't have to like hold any modifiers or anything like that. I can just start dragging. And if we drag left until the tip's there, we're going to drag right until the edge of the bat's there. And it takes a few times because each time you scale it kind of shifts the other side. But if you just do it a few times, you'll eventually get it lined up with the line there. And that should be pretty close, which is all you really need. All right, I'll hit enter on that, and let's just kind of quick look. All right, that's pretty good, not terrible. To zoom in and out, you can hold Control and spin your mouse wheel. There's other ways as well, that's just one way. So it still looks a little bit small to me. So I'm just gonna go a little bit bigger, hit enter. And then it's not lined up anymore, but I know it's pretty close. So I'm gonna hit this little tool up here, the move tool, and just move it till the edge is lined up. Again, Control, scroll. And it might be just a teensy bit too big, so I'm holding space to shift over again. We'll go back to our scale tool, okay, and just barely drag that down. Okay, so that's gonna be probably close. Yeah, that's pretty good there. So now we have the bat to measure. Now, why would we do that? I'll show you a couple of examples of where this can be useful in the project. So what you can do now is put lines where important pieces are. So for example, let's say we want to know how big the hit and runs verbiage is from the H to the last diamond here, because that's what we have on our cry-cut files that we're going to use. Or I should just say vinyl cutter files, really. So now that we're looking there, we can see the length of it. But the problem is those two elements, even though we drew lines, you know, they're not perfectly on the same parallel or whatever. So we'll just drop a line there for easy reference. And then if you go to Tools, and you can say Measure, and you'll just click here and drag. And if you hold it down, it'll eventually get over there. And I'm going to hold Alt, which will make it flat, or no, Control, which makes it flat, and drop it there. And we can see that that is 15.1 inches left to right, which will be the total length of that. So that's how you can kind of get scaling off of here. Another thing that you can scale, which you'll see me do in a video here shortly, is I'll draw some lines in here for reference, and then I'll say, okay, so from here to here is where the main bulk of the, I guess we'll call this just the bloody areas. But then you notice from that point that I drew going up, right, is going to, see how it kind of wraps around there? So then I can say, okay, well, I know this ends, like the wraparound part kind of ends here from a central point, right? And so if I drag that backwards to about that midpoint there, okay, so that's about 12 inches across. But then I also know that that rise from the center point is about 1.3 inches or so. And so I can kind of sketch that with a pencil on my bat. And so when I go to paint the red in, I can say, okay, well, I know this element here or this element here starts about this many inches in. And then I have those reference points. So like the stencils and stuff, you know, placement's good. But for the red stuff, I kind of have to sketch out to really match it so I can get this line to run perfectly through the letters like that. And another useful spot is like, how big are the band-aids? Okay, so these are, let's say, 2 inches long and probably ½ inch or so. Yep. Same thing here. This one's actually a little smaller. So that helps there. And then like the Batman, I know that if I drag it from here to the tip of his head, he's just shy of 5 inches, right? So you can kind of measure that and see how big everything is from that regard as well. And that way, if you're trying to find a good matching one or something like that, you can find one that's a better size. And then one other thing I'd point out is from the hilt, so being like the little knob part of the baseball bat, to where the tape stops, right? So that's just about 9.5 inches, maybe a little bit less. So when you're wrapping that up, you can, if you really want to match it very precise, you can do that. If you want to get very specific, you can measure from here to this first like awkward gap of missing tape. And that missing tape is this big. So you can get as specific as you want, or you can just kind of do it loose. I just wanted to show how this tool works. And when you see me like sketching on the bat, or maybe trying to figure out how far down this goes or how wide a material is, that kind of stuff, you'll kind of understand where I got those references from. Next, we're going to talk about setting up the cut in your vinyl cutting studio. So in this case, I am using the cry-cut, so I'll be using the cry-cut studio, but this should be a similar method in any of the available studios for your particular vinyl cutting device. Alright, so here we're going to go ahead and create a blank canvas project. And down here at the bottom, I'm looking for it right now, but there's an upload button. And I'm going to upload the files that you can find on the Thingiverse page. Again, look down in the comments or the description for the link. And we're going to import the SVG files if available. You can use the images, but SVG will give you the best results as they are not rasterized images. And therefore, they are infinitely scalable. Alright, now you can see here I'm importing the two main portions of the text, one being for the blue paint and the other for the white paint. And you'll see that when I'm uploading them, they're separate. So something to keep in mind as you're working with these and you begin to scale them, you're going to want to make sure that they scale to the same size. And you can do this by selecting them both while you're doing the scaling. Now remember, before we did our measurements, you can find the reference images made from our measurements before inside the Thingiverse files. Now that we have all of our stencils cut out, it's time to apply them to the bat, so we'll go over that in these next few steps. Here I'm just painting in the red portions of the bat based on the mapping that we did earlier with the distances of the red splotches and stuff. And so you just dip the tip of the paintbrush into the red paint and just kind of stipple it on, and this will give it that kind of cool edgy look where it's kind of paint splattered, but also allow you to control it pretty good. So I do go off camera here a little bit, but that's all I'm doing is just tapping the brush along those lines that I marked with the pencil earlier. Alright, now we're going to cut down the foil tape. In this case I had 1 inch wide foil tape, and I cut it down to about 0.6 inches or so to match the measurements on the back. Once the tape is cut down, you'll want to use the reference guide to try to match what you see in the images that we captured. You'll want to start at the very top just below the red paint pattern and wrap all the way around with the second band almost leveling out. And then once you pass by the red zone one more time, it's going to start to branch off towards the top, kind of in the spot where the red is not. Again, just kind of use the reference guide to help guide you there. And you may have to peel back and reapply the tape here and there. It's not going to hurt it. Most of the tape like this sticks pretty well. So what you want to do here is paint really thickly along the outside edge of the top of the baseball bat, and then make some spots a little thicker than others and lightly tap the handle to cause the paint drips to fall. Lighter taps are better at first. You can always double up on the paint afterwards and do it again once the paint has had a chance to dry to make thicker drips if you need to. Alright, what we're going to do here is weed out the vinyl so that the letters are pulled off of the actual stencil we made. We're going to stick it to transfer tape so we can evenly put it onto the bat. If you don't do that, it can get messed up pretty easily when you're trying to transfer it to the bat. We will then set up the stencil on the actual bat by placing it where it belongs. It is best if you do this in smaller segments. I did it one big chunk and it was quite difficult. Cut it in smaller sections and save yourself some grief there. And then we're going to paint the first layer, being the blue layer, onto that, and then we will remove the stencil after that point. Alright, now for steps 5 through 8, we are going to set up the white stenciling. We'll go ahead and paint the white layers on top, make sure the paint underneath is quite dry before you start that. We will cut the end cap vinyl for the Batman face, and we'll go ahead and start the black paint on top of that. When doing the black paint, be sure it's really well suctioned because it's such a small detail. You don't want it to accidentally seep underneath, and do dry brushing on top, which will really help you keep the details without hopefully accidentally sliding underneath the stencil itself. Alright, for steps 9 through 13, we'll go ahead and paint the pink smile on the Batman on the end of the bat. We will use the pen to paint in the actual eyes for the Batman. I did find it a lot easier to do that and a lot more authentic looking than using the stencils that I created for it. And then we will go ahead and paint the other end of the cap black as well, like we did the top cap. And then finally we're going to go ahead and wrap the hockey tape on there, and we'll very lightly smear paint onto our hands and just kind of get it as dry as you can by rubbing it on stuff so it's almost not wet at all, and just kind of smudge around on the grip with some red paint and black paint. And then the last step will be, of course, attaching the wires using the furniture tack. And just light hits of the hammer will do a lot of wonders there. Alright, so this concludes the Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League hit and run baseball bat build here. So I wanted to point out a few minor details just in case they weren't covered very well in the video itself. So one thing I did end up adding is a tiny thin blue line right here. Sometimes the white template when you're using it might be a little tricky. So add a tiny thin blue line there, and that just kind of helps separate this diamond shape here for more definition. You will notice that there's a few smudges of yellow and stuff like that throughout. Sometimes I do it intentionally, sometimes it's accidental, but generally speaking it's going to make it look a lot better. Now when you are hammering the tack in, if you don't want to cause damage like I have here, you might want to cover it with like a piece of paper or something folded up when you're hammering it in, and that'll keep it nice and protected. I kind of like the battle-worn look, so I just kind of hammered away and let the paint chip a bit. And all I did was tape the end of the wires together and shove them underneath the tack area here, and then kind of tack that back down. I released the hockey tape, put it back down, and retacked it kind of thing, and then wrapped it along. Now right now the Batman doll I have on here is huge. He's a 9-inch plushie. This should be a 5-inch plushie, which is about the size of the entire body of this one here. So I've got one on order. It's not blue, but it does look pretty close, so I'm going to go ahead and go with that one just because it'll be a little bit better. Other details that might be important is I have not done the scratching yet, so that should run somewhere around here, and you'll see that in the template files that I provided. Whenever you're scratching, wear gloves, be extremely careful and take your time. It is incredibly easy to accidentally slice or shank yourself if you're doing that, so just be a little careful there. And then the last few details, the ears here should be vertical to the hit and run message, and the top of the ears actually line up with the diamond here. I do have it just slightly slanted here just to align a little better of how I did the graphics here, but ideally you'd have him perfectly vertical to the lettering there. And then just kind of a quick rotation so you can kind of see what I did with the tape there. My general technique there was to start at the top a little bit below, so like right here, wrap around, do one solid line in the middle, and when it comes back through, if I can figure out my orientation here, it kind of branches off on this last little branch there, ending just above the red splotchiness. Other than that, you know, everything looks pretty good. I'm super happy with the build. Like I said, once I get the final plushie in, I'll be good, and then I'll do that final scratching by hand, which again will run somewhere along here. So that is it. I'll just kind of give you one last look at the back here so you can kind of see everything. And we'll just kind of run it along there. You see all the details on the tape. I did red and black in the tape as well. I'm going to add a few more Christmas bulbs because there's a few missing there, but it should be all blue and red. And the last bit right there. So thank you for watching my video. Feel free to share, subscribe, and like. And if you have any recommendations on how I can make the video better in the future, I would much appreciate it, as I feel like this one may have been a bit longer than it needed to be. So just let me know in the comments. All right, as always, be kind, and thank you very much for watching.